From the moment the sun peeped through the curtains, John always had one thought in mind: his love for Mary. 20 years of togetherness had flown by, seemingly in the blink of an eye. They had crafted a life together that, to the outside world, appeared as close to perfection as one could get. John often heard his friends say, "You and Mary are relationship goals." Their mornings were filled with playful banters over breakfast, while evenings usually saw them cuddled up on the couch, watching their favorite shows or discussing the kids' day. Their 2 children, Lily and Max, were the apples of their eyes. The dog, Bella, was the lively cherry on top of their family sundae. The white picket fence around their house wasn't just for show, it genuinely felt like they were living a dream. John often found himself reminiscing about the early days when they were young, wild, and deeply in love. The way Mary's eyes would light up when he surprised her with a bouquet of roses, or how they'd dance in the rain, not a care in the world. Those moments in John's mind were pure magic. However, of late, there had been subtle changes. Nothing dramatic or alarming, just little things that felt off. Mary seemed a touch more distant. She laughed a little less, and her gaze often wandered away, lost in thought. There were times when she'd come home late from work, her reason being an unexpected meeting or an office event. John tried not to think much of it. After all, they had built a foundation of trust over 2 decades. Doubting her over trivial matters felt wrong. Still, at night, as John lay in bed with Mary's back turned to him, a tiny, nagging voice at the back of his head whispered, "What if there's more to this story?" He would quickly shoosh it away, pulling Mary close and reminding himself of all the love-filled years they had shared. Surely, they were strong enough to weather any storm. But as days turned into weeks, the feeling of unease grew stronger. John couldn't shake off the idea that maybe, just maybe, his perfect life wasn't so perfect after all. The days took on a new hue for John, a shade darker than what he was used to. Each moment felt stretched, and every second was a question mark. The trust that had been their anchor for 2 decades now wavered, and John found himself caught in a web of doubt and unease. It all began on a quiet Saturday afternoon. Mary had gone out for one of her frequent work meetings. John was sorting through their bedroom closet, trying to find an old photo album to take a trip down memory lane and maybe remind himself of better times. As he delved deeper into the closet, a small glint caught his eye. Pushing aside old scarves and winter hats, he found a phone he didn't recognize. It wasn't Mary's usual phone, that much was sure. Curiosity piqued, he turned it on. The screen came alive, showing numerous notifications from someone named Alex. The messages seemed intimate, with words like "miss you" and "can't wait to see you again." A cold wave of realization washed over John, and his heart raced. Could it be? Could Mary really be seeing someone else? He didn't want to jump to conclusions. Perhaps there was an innocent explanation. Maybe Alex was just a close friend or a relative Mary had reconnected with. Trying to calm his racing heart, he decided to play detective. For the next few days, he paid closer attention to Mary's habits. The late-night phone calls, the giggles, the secret smiles to herself, it all started making a grim kind of sense. One evening, he took a bold step. John decided to follow Mary discreetly. He watched as she entered a quaint little cafe and settled into a corner booth. Soon after, a man walked in. Alex. They embraced warmly, a little too warmly for just friends. John felt like a voyeur, peering into a world he wasn't meant to see. The sight of Mary laughing, her hand lingering on Alex's, shattered him. He wanted to confront them right there, ask them how they could betray his trust, but something held him back. The pain was intense, but John wasn't one to make impulsive decisions. He needed to be sure. He needed a plan. Driving home that night, the weight of the world pressed down on him. The woman he had loved and trusted for 20 years was living a double life. The pain of betrayal was sharp and raw. But John wasn't going to let this slide. He was going to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. As the days passed, John's initial shock morphed into a steely determination. He felt like a man reborn, with a newfound clarity of purpose. Every fiber of his being screamed for justice, but he was determined to act wisely, not impulsively. He realized that for maximum impact and to ensure Mary truly understood the depth of her betrayal, he needed to confront her in a way she would never forget. The idea struck him one quiet evening as he was thumbing through old family photos, a dinner party with all of Mary's family. The very people she had grown up with, the ones who had celebrated their union and had been part of every significant chapter of their lives. They all loved and respected John. Revealing the truth in front of them would hit Mary the hardest, making her realize the gravity of her actions. He began his preparations. Invitations were sent out under the guise of a surprise anniversary party that John was secretly planning for Mary. Her family, completely unaware of the storm brewing, responded with enthusiasm, touched by John's romantic gesture. Meanwhile, John started gathering evidence. He discreetly documented Mary's secret rendezvous with Alex, making sure he had video proof of their intimate moments. It was a difficult task, for each captured moment felt like a dagger through his heart. But he pressed on, fueled by a burning desire for justice. As the date of the dinner neared, John felt a mixture of dread and anticipation. He arranged for the children to spend the weekend at a friend's house, wanting to shield them from the impending fallout. The dining table was set to perfection, complete with Mary's favorite flowers and dishes. The atmosphere was festive, with soft music playing in the background. But beneath the veneer of celebration, a storm was brewing. Guests started arriving, filling the house with laughter and warmth. Mary was touched, her eyes misty with emotion. Little did she know that this would be a night she'd never forget. As the main course was served and the room echoed with happy chatter, John took a deep breath, preparing himself for the most challenging act of his life. His plan was set in motion, and there was no turning back now. The moment of reckoning was here. The atmosphere in the room was thick with celebration. Memories of the past 20 years were shared, glasses clinked, and the air was filled with hearty laughter. Each of these sounds and sights seemed surreal to John, like a distant echo as he waited for the right moment. Mary was radiant, her eyes gleaming with surprise and appreciation for what she believed to be a touching gesture by her husband. She leaned in to whisper, "This is the sweetest thing you've ever done for me." John, though tormented inside, just nodded, masking his turmoil with a practiced smile. As dessert was served, John felt it was time. He stood up, tapping his glass gently, the universal signal for attention. The room fell silent, all eyes on him, expectantly awaiting a loving speech. John took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, voice steady. "Today, I wanted to talk about trust, about love, and about truth." The guests exchanged glances, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. Mary looked up, her face a mask of confusion. John continued, "Over the years, we've all shared numerous happy moments, haven't we? But today, I want to share something else, something I recently discovered." He paused, taking out a small remote from his pocket. The lights dimmed, and the large TV screen in the living room flickered to life. Displayed on it were clips of Mary and Alex, their secret meetings, and intimate conversations. The room was engulfed in a stunned silence, each scene more incriminating than the last. As the video ended, the weight of the room's shock was palpable. Mary's face had drained of all color, her eyes wide with disbelief and horror. Her family members stared at the screen, then at her, seeking some kind of explanation. "How could you?" John's voice trembled, no longer able to contain the hurt. 20 years, Mary. Was it all a lie?" Mary's voice broke as she tried to respond. "John, I never meant for any of this to happen. It was a mistake." But John cut her off. "A mistake? For how long? How many days, weeks, and months was this mistake continuing?" The room echoed with murmured whispers and gasps. Mary's siblings tried to intervene, asking John to perhaps discuss this privately, but he stood firm. "In front of the very family that celebrated our union, I want you to know the depth of your betrayal," he declared, eyes filled with tears. "I gave you everything, and this is what I get in return." Mary was sobbing now, her voice a mix of regret and desperation. "I'm so sorry, John. Please let's talk away from all this." But John had said all he wanted to. "You need to leave, Mary. Leave our home, and let me find a way to heal." The party, which had started in joy and reminiscence, ended in heartbreak and disbelief. The confrontation was more painful than John had anticipated. but he felt a grim sense of closure. The truth was out, and the next chapter of his life awaited. In the days following the confrontation, John's home, which once buzzed with life and laughter, transformed into a silent monument to the love that once was. The deafening silence was often interrupted by the constant ringing of the telephone and knocks on the door, but John couldn't bear to face the world or its barrage of questions and sympathies. Every corner of the house held a memory. The couch where they'd cuddled and watched countless movies, the kitchen where they'd cooked meals together, even the small dent in the wall from when they'd tried, laughingly and unsuccessfully, to move in a too large bookshelf. Everything echoed Mary's absence. One evening, as John was aimlessly wandering from room to room, he stumbled upon the old photo album he had been searching for weeks earlier. Opening it, he was flooded with a tidal wave of memories: their wedding day, the birth of their kids, holidays, and birthdays. He realized that while the pain of betrayal was sharp, the pain of loss was even deeper. Their children, Lily and Max, were equally heartbroken. They had known their family as a pillar of love and trust, and seeing it crumble was beyond comprehension. They missed their mother, but also grappled with feelings of anger and disappointment. John did his best to shield them, ensuring they knew they were loved and that their parents' issues weren't their fault. One day, a letter arrived, Mary's handwriting. She wrote of her guilt, her regrets, and her undying love for John. She spoke of the loneliness she had felt, leading her down a path she regretted with every fiber of her being. She begged for a chance to explain, not to mend their relationship, but to provide closure. Against his better judgment, John agreed to meet. Seeing Mary again was like reopening a wound. She looked haggard, a shadow of her former self. Their conversation was filled with tears, regrets, and some semblance of understanding. Mary explained how her relationship with Alex had begun innocently, but how she'd lost her way amidst feelings of neglect and the need for attention. While John could understand, he couldn't forget or forgive. The trust that was the bedrock of their relationship had crumbled, and there was no going back. They parted ways, with a promise to co-parent their children and keep their well-being at the forefront. As the weeks turned into months, John slowly began to rebuild his life. He dove into his work, spent quality time with Lily and Max, and sought therapy to process his pain. Friends and family rallied around him, their support acting as a balm for his wounded soul. Despite the hurt and the betrayal, John realized he needed to let go of the past to embrace the future. While he might never fully heal, he was determined to find happiness again, not just for himself, but for his children. The aftermath of the storm was painful, but as with all storms, it also brought clarity and, in time, a new beginning.